Who is Bill Clinton? He promised a tax cut and gave the American people a tax increase. He's piling up more deficits that are speeding America to the brink of bankruptcy. He worked feverishly for the passage of the North American Free Trade Agreement, a major victory for the enemies of national sovereignty who are seeking the New World Order. He and his unelected spouse are determined to replace the world's finest medical care system with a type of government-run socialistic system that has failed everywhere else it has been established. He is moving as fast as he dares to place U.S. military units under the control of the United Nations. He has appointed militant homosexuals to high government posts and is determined to overturn the long-standing ban against homosexuals in the military. He has given the nation a Surgeon General who wants to drum sex education into the minds of children in kindergarten, who also wants to distribute condoms to junior high schoolers, make government-subsidized abortion everyone's right, and legalize drugs. He is leading the campaign to eliminate the right of all Americans to keep and bear arms. He has established a Hitler-like National Service Corps, pushed for the start of federally controlled police, and nominated criminal coddling judges for the federal judiciary. He submits to the demands of the environmental extremists and has presided over the imposition of crippling controls over Western mining, grazing, and foresting interests. In general, Mr. Clinton's every domestic initiative seeks to build the power of government over the American people, and his foreign policy programs are designed to lead the United States into the clutches of a world government under the United Nations. This is Bill Clinton. How did he get to be President of the United States? Whose interests does he really serve? We're going to be talking about the agent of a powerful conspiracy. Bill Clinton has spent his entire adult life working his way into the inner circles of a powerful conspiracy determined to rule the world. He was introduced to its sinister goals while studying at Georgetown University under Professor Carroll Quigley. He then spent 2 years in the training ground of a secret society known as the Rhodes Scholar Program. Later, he joined both the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. He has also been present among the conspiratorial elite at a European Bilderberg meeting. In short, he has worked tirelessly to place himself at the service of those who are building a totalitarian new world order. The organizations Bill Clinton has joined seek to rule the world and to make every human being their submissive slaves. He has shown that their agenda is his agenda, that their goals for mankind are his goals, that their people are his people, and like them, he regularly plays loose with the truth, masquerades as a patriotic supporter of liberty, betrays his oath of office as if it didn't exist, and works diligently to fasten the chains of totalitarian government around an increasingly less free American people. Mr. Clinton never publicized his highly questionable connections during his campaign for the presidency, preferring instead to portray himself as the hard-working governor of Arkansas. His like-minded friends in the media have always ignored his easily documented ties to the power elite. But his credentials clearly confirm that he is another in a long line of political figures who has prostrated himself before the internationalists who mean to convert this nation and all nations into mere provinces in a totalitarian new world order. Both the organizations Mr. Clinton has joined and their subversive goals for America are generally unknown to the American people. In summary, they mean to convert our nation's limited government and free people into a tyrannical world government and economic slavery for all but themselves. Anyone who affiliates with these groups and agrees with their purposes cannot honorably swear an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the U.S. Constitution. Mr. Clinton's background is similar in many ways to the path to prominence of George Bush, his major opponent in the 1992 election. Earlier in 1992, during the primary season, when Mr. Clinton faced opposition within his own party, any one of his Democratic challenges could have and should have informed prospective voters that choosing Clinton would get them a virtual duplicate of George Bush. After all, Mr. Bush was an early trilateral member, had been a member of the board of directors of the Council on Foreign Relations, and had attended Bilderberg meetings. Clinton and Bush have ties to the same internationalist organizations. But Clinton's Democratic opponents Paul Tsongas, Tom Harkin, Bob Kerrey, Jerry Brown, and Jesse Jackson declined to address this remarkable similarity of Mr. Bush and Mr. Clinton during that supposedly heated 1992 primary contest. Voters needed and deserved to have this kind of information about the men who seek the presidency, but the voters never got it. Why? The answer can only be that these Democratic candidates fear the power of these groups and hope that someday they too might be welcomed into the same inner circles that Bill Clinton and George Bush had already entered. As long ago as 1913, President Woodrow Wilson wrote of a hidden power existing in his day. That power still exists today, and it exists in the hands of the groups that Bill Clinton and George Bush have joined. What Woodrow Wilson said in his book in 1913, the book entitled The New Freedom, was this: some of the biggest men in the United States are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. Democratic aspirants for high office aren't alone in fearing and submitting to this type of power. Most of the leaders of both political parties submit as well. And so too do most of the prominent reporters and analysts and commentators in the nation's mass media. They not only don't speak about this power in whispers, they don't mention it at all. Nor do politicians and media heavyweights focus deserved attention on Mr. Clinton's numerous character flaws. It took a U.S. Army general named Harold N. Campbell to point out, at the eventual cost of his career, that our nation's president was a pot-smoking, gay-loving, draft-dodging, and womanizing commander-in-chief. The horror here isn't that an Army general was so disrespectful. The horror is that everything he said was absolutely correct. Had any one of these serious personal deficiencies been found in a candidate for high office who is not part of the conspiracy, the media would have made a huge story out of it as a way to derail any challenge to the conspiracy's awesome power. But, bad as they are, even these numerous character flaws in the president are minor compared to the agenda Mr. Clinton will carry out at the behest of his equally corrupt conspiratorial bosses. We mentioned 4 organizations that Bill Clinton has affiliated with. The history and purpose of each tells a horrifying story. Let's examine them one by one. The Council on Foreign Relations first. Bill Clinton is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. This organization was created during the period 1919 to 1921 by a group of Americans who were determined international socialists. They acted in 1919 immediately after the United States Senate refused to have the United States join the Sovereignty Compromising League of Nations. President Wilson's top advisor, Edward Mandell House, led the American contingent at the meeting in Paris where the Council on Foreign Relations was born. House was the highly placed individual who had persuaded President Wilson to propose the creation of the League of Nations in the president's famous 14-point speech. And it was this same man who had earlier distinguished himself as an enemy of freedom by calling for socialism as dreamed of by Karl Marx in his 1912 novel, Philip Drew, Administrator. The purpose of the Council on Foreign Relations, right from its beginning, was to lead our nation into world government. For any American who fully subscribes to its goal, this meant actively working to cancel both the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. The plan included bringing men of power and influence into their circle, enlisting their support, and then using them to influence others. Before the 1920s had faded into history, financing for the Council on Foreign Relations schemes came from the Rockefeller, Ford, and Carnegie Foundations. The December 1922 issue of the CFR's quarterly publication, Foreign Affairs, set the tone for the organization with a lament about the existence of, quote, 50 or 60 independent states, close quote, and an open call for world government. The Council on Foreign Relations' determination to sacrifice the independence of the United States and all other nations on the altar of an all-powerful superstate has continued to appear in its publications throughout succeeding decades. chaired for many years by David Rockefeller and led since 1985 by former Nixon-era Secretary of Commerce Peter G. Peterson, the privately run Council on Foreign Relations has dominated the American government, the corporate world, academia, the foundations, and the mass media for many, many years. Mr. Clinton's appointment of CFR members to high posts in his administration threatens to break CFR veteran George Bush's record of 387 such appointments. With only 3,000 members, the Council on Foreign Relations membership list currently includes President Clinton, White House Counselor David Gergen, Secretary of State Warren Christopher, Secretary of Defense Les Aspin, CIA Director James Woolsey, National Security Advisor Anthony Lake, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Henry Cisneros, Secretary of the Interior Bruce Babbitt, Secretary of Health and Human Services Donna Shalala, Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Roger Altman, Ambassador of the United Nations Madeleine Albright, and literally hundreds of deputy secretaries, assistant secretaries, and high-level bureaucrats. For the strategically important posts in the U.S. State Department, Mr. Clinton has appointed Winston Lord and Peter Tarnoff, both of them former presidents of the Council on Foreign Relations. In addition, there are 15 United States Senate members that are holding CFR membership. They are Mitchell of Maine, Pell of Rhode Island, Chafee of Rhode Island, Moynihan of New York, Kerry of Massachusetts, Roth of Delaware, Dodd of Connecticut, Robb of Virginia, Lieberman of Connecticut, Cohen of Maine, Boren of Oklahoma, Rockefeller of West Virginia, Pressler of South Dakota, Wofford of Pennsylvania, and Graham of Florida. There are about as many House members as there are Senate members who have joined the Council on Foreign Relations, including House Speaker Thomas Foley of Washington, Democratic leader Richard Gephardt of Missouri, and Republican leader Newt Gingrich of Georgia. Mass media executives who are Council on Foreign Relations members include top executives of NBC, CBS, ABC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Los Angeles Times, Time, Newsweek, U.S. News and World Report, National Review, and numerous other publications. Among those listed by the Council on Foreign Relations as members are such high-profile television personalities as David Brinkley, Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters, Garrick Utley, John Chancellor, Irving R. Levine, Richard C. Hottelet, William F. Buckley Jr., and Jim Lehrer. In 1975, after serving for 20 years as a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, retired U.S. Navy Admiral Chester Ward stated in a book he co-authored that the organization's goal includes, quote, submergence of U.S. sovereignty and national independence into an all-powerful one-world government, end quote. Admiral Ward, who was the Judge Advocate General of the United States Navy for many years, also claimed that within the CFR, this lust to surrender the sovereignty and independence of the United States is pervasive throughout most of the membership. Operating primarily in the political and foreign policy arenas, the privately run Council on Foreign Relations strongly supports the world government designs of the United Nations. It is housed in this building located in New York City. For a valuable history of the subversive nature of the Council on Foreign Relations compiled from its own documents and the statements of its own members, we recommend The Shadows of Power, the Council on Foreign Relations and the American Decline by James Perloff. Well, let's shift now to the Trilateral Commission. In 1988, Bill Clinton also accepted membership in the Trilateral Commission. This organization grew out of a 1970 book authored by Columbia University professor and Council on Foreign Relations member Zbigniew Brzezinski, entitled Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. Brzezinski's book praised Marxism for 60-odd pages, claimed that America was becoming obsolete, called for centralization of government power, and outlined a plan for the creation of economic and political linkages among the United States, Western Europe, and Japan. 3 areas became the Trilateral Commission. At the very end of his book, Brzezinski proposed world government as his ultimate goal. In 1972, CFR Chairman David Rockefeller and Brzezinski journeyed to Europe to a meeting of the Bilderberger movement in order to present their ideas for implementing the plan outlined by Brzezinski in his book. The Bilderbergers approved the plan with enthusiasm. Rockefeller then gathered 18 prominent leaders from the United States, Western Europe, and Japan at his estate north of New York City to hammer out the details for the Trilateral Commission, which they formally launched in July of 1973 with Brzezinski as the overall director. Membership in the New York-based Trilateral Commission has never exceeded 300, 1/3 drawn from each of the regions suggested in Brzezinski's book, with the only minor change of adding Canada to the North American region. One of the first members of the Trilateral Commission named by Rockefeller and Brzezinski was Jimmy Carter. The connections Carter was able to make through Trilateral Commission membership were a critical ingredient in propelling him into the presidency in the 1976 election. Of course, he regularly insisted, dishonestly, that he had no ties to the Eastern establishment. Once in office, his appointments to the very highest posts in his government included such trilateralists as Vice President Walter Mondale, Secretary of State Cyrus Vance, Assistant Secretary of State Warren Christopher, Secretary of Defense Harold Brown, Secretary of the Treasury W. Michael Blumenthal, National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, and Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker. Trilateral domination of the Carter administration became a key issue for Ronald Reagan during his climb to the 1980 Republican nomination. But Mr. Reagan swiftly abandoned the issue after he selected CFR and Trilateral veteran George Bush for his running mate. Numerous other Trilateral Commission members served in strategic posts during both the Reagan and Bush administrations, and there were many Council on Foreign Relations men as well. The current Trilateral Commission Executive Committee lists such influential individuals as David Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, Paul Volcker, Robert McNamara, and Zbigniew Brzezinski. Trilateralists in the Clinton administration include the President himself, Secretary of State Christopher, Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board Chairman William Crowe, Health and Human Services Secretary Donna Shalala, Interior Secretary Bruce Babbitt, Housing and Urban Development Secretary Henry Cisneros, Deputy Secretary of the Office of Management and Budget Alice Rivlin, Undersecretary of State Peter Tarnoff, and Assistant Secretary of State Winston Lloyd. C. Fred Bergston, one of the Trilateral Commission's original planners, a current Trilateral and Council on Foreign Relations member, and a former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, directs the Washington-based Institute for International Economics, IIE. The IIE Board of Directors includes such prominent individuals as Council on Foreign Relations Chairman Peter G. Peterson and former Council on Foreign Relations Chairman David Rockefeller, former Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker, and current Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, and numerous other Council on Foreign Relations and Trilateral Commission members. In keeping with the goal of the Trilateral Commission for centralized worldwide control of all economic matters, Mr. Bergston has written that, quote, the world economy is in trouble unless there is some central steering mechanism, end quote. This is clearly the goal of the conspiracy. Bergston and the powerful individuals serving on his board are working to cede economic sovereignty of the United States to a world body such as the United Nations. Like its Council on Foreign Relations counterpart, the Trilateral Commission is strongly supportive of the world government designs of the United Nations. We've mentioned the Bilderberger movement. In 1991, then Governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, journeyed to Baden-Baden in Germany to attend a meeting of the Bilderbergers, an annual gathering of approximately 100 of the Western world's leaders in the fields of finance, government, business, education, and labor. Named Bilderbergers because the first meeting in 1954 was held at the Hotel de Bilderberg in the town of Oostbeek in Holland, the movement was launched by David Rockefeller and Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, way back in 1954. Each meeting is a 3-day affair held in deep secrecy at one of the world's plushest resorts. No reporters are allowed, and no information is given to the public about the topics to be discussed or the persons in attendance, and yet we managed to find out some of what goes on. Prince Bernhard lost his Bilderberg leadership in 1976 as a consequence of his involvement in a bribery scandal. But during his trip to Vermont in 1971 to attend a Bilderberg conference at Lawrence Rockefeller's Woodstock Inn, he told the Rutland, Vermont Herald that a main topic of discussion at the meetings was a change in the world role of the United States. Bernhard also told his own biographer, Alden Hatch, of the difficulty of persuading people who have been brought up on the idea of nationalism to relinquish part of their sovereignty to a supranational body. Here we have the fundamental items on the Bilderberg agenda. Change the role of the United States and lead all people and all nations away from national sovereignty. U.S. citizens who participate in these secret gatherings are hardly being loyal to our country. Just as enthusiasm was generated for the creation of the Trilateral Commission at a Bilderberg meeting, Bilderberg discussions preceded the Treaty of Rome and the European Community it spawned. Other Bilderberger meetings preceded the 1971 severing of the U.S. dollar from gold backing and various disarmament proposals, and the Nixon administration's decision to inaugurate contacts with communist China. Occasionally, a rising political figure such as Bill Clinton is showcased before these movers and shakers of Western Europe and the United States. If he wins their approval, he has passed a major hurdle in his rise to power. Participants at these meetings include many top political leaders and industrialists from Western Europe and America. Americans who have attended the Bilderberg meetings include David Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, Robert McNamara, George Ball, William Bundy, Gerald Ford, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Robert L. Bartley, Peter G. Peterson, Paul Nitze, Cyrus Vance, Vernon Jordan, William F. Buckley Jr., Walter Mondale, George Will, Barbara Conable, Bill Moyers, Alexander Haig, Theodore Hesburgh, Katharine Graham, John Sununu, Paul Volcker, Tom Foley, and Bill Clinton. Practically all of these individuals are also members of the Council on Foreign Relations. But Bill Clinton began his entry into this cabal with the Rhodes Scholar Program. After graduating from Georgetown University in 1968, he went to England to study at Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar. In his August 1992 speech accepting the nomination of the Democrat Party for president, Bill Clinton paid tribute to a professor I had, is the way he put it, named Carroll Quigley. Quigley taught for many years at Georgetown University in Washington, where one of his students was Bill Clinton. The mere mention of Quigley's name by Mr. Clinton is highly significant. In 1966, Carroll Quigley's 1,340-page book, Tragedy and Hope, became available. In it, the Harvard-trained professor who earned his BA, MA, and PhD at Harvard supplied an abundance of details about what he called a secret society that was hatched in England at Oxford University beginning in 1870. He traced it to the work of Professor John Ruskin, who urged upon his students the belief that they should rule the world. The Ruskin message had a profound impact on many of his students, but none received it with more enthusiasm than Cecil Rhodes, the man who later became the fabulously wealthy developer of Southern Africa's diamond and gold mines. According to Quigley, Rhodes and others created this secret society, and that's his term, and the purpose was, quote, to federate the English-speaking peoples and to bring all the habitable portions of the world under their control, end quote. Their goal, according to Quigley, was nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. The Georgetown professor described in detail how the plans of Rhodes and his associated culminated in the formation of the Council on Foreign Relations in America and the Royal Institute for International Affairs in England. The shared goal of these organizations included the reuniting of the United States with England and then bringing all of the world under their control. This, of course, would mean casting aside both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Repeatedly making reference to the Rhodes Group as a secret society or a secret network, Quigley's only complaint about it was that it wishes to remain unknown, and I think its role in history is significant enough to be known. In another book authored by Quigley called The Anglo-American Establishment, The Georgetown professor explained that one of the several wills left by Cecil Rhodes provided for the creation of the Rhodes Scholarship Program. In this book, Quigley flatly stated that the scholarships were merely a facade to conceal the secret society. Obviously, anyone imbued with the attitudes dispensed in the Rhodes Scholarship Program cannot honorably swear an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the U.S. Constitution. Rhodes Scholars high in government today include President Clinton, Labor Secretary Robert Reich, Economic Advisor Ira Magaziner, CIA Director James Woolsey, State Department Assistant Secretary Strobe Talbot, Presidential Advisor George Stephanopoulos, Supreme Court Justice David Souter, New Jersey Senator Bill Bradley, Indiana Senator Richard Lugar, Oklahoma Senator David Boren, South Dakota Senator Larry Pressler, and Maryland Senator Paul Sarbanes. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we dare call it a conspiracy. A growing number of Americans have begun to realize that the steady loss of their personal freedom, the increasing transfer of our nation's sovereignty to international organizations, and the frightening buildup of federal power are not happening by chance. In short, many have correctly concluded that deliberate planning is fast bringing down the curtain on the American dream. At the root of America's decline is a conspiracy. Its tentacles can be found primarily in the organizations we have described: the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, and the Rhodes Scholar Program, all of which Bill Clinton has joined. Even this powerfully entrenched conspiracy can be exposed and routed, however, if enough Americans will rouse themselves from lethargy, get informed, and shine the light of day on its destructive plans. Time is short, however. The day is fast approaching when corrective educational and political activity will no longer be possible in this land of the free. The conspirators intend to tighten their grip and forge the chains of tyranny around a sleeping America. The time to act is now. Get informed and get involved for your own sake, for the sake of your children, and for generations yet to come who would like to inherit, as you and I did, the marvelous gift of living in this country, the finest experiment in human liberty in all history. Contact the John Birch Society today. If you are among the tens of millions of Americans of good conscience and humane ideals, you will be glad you did. You may then likely decide, as many other Americans have already decided, to join us in our proud companionship and in our epic undertaking. We look forward eagerly to your inquiry, and we thank you very much for your attention.